Hey everybody, this is Matthew Soltesiak and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast. Using my sportscasting background, I speak with a variety of guests and interview key players to gain more insight on what makes this team go. As the Detroit Lions enter a new gritty era, we'll look beyond just the kneecaps when it comes to the analysis. Welcome to another episode. In this episode, we talk about the Detroit Lions' 34-31 loss against the San Francisco 49ers in the NFC Championship game. We'll discuss the atmosphere at Levi Stadium, and as usual, we'll discuss what went well, the pivotal moments in the game, and any concerns as well as takeaways and major storylines coming out of this contest. Let's get to it, Lions fans.
Hey everyone, this is Lomas Brown, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast.
As usual, I'm joined today by James Cook, senior sports writer for the Traverse City Record Eagle. You can also hear him on the Get Around podcast that drops on Mondays. James, as usual, it's good to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Well, as we get started, let's start with the head coach right away. Here's what Dan Campbell said right after the game.
Give those guys, a lot of credit. We knew they wouldn't go away, and they made the plays today. Coach Shanahan's a hell of a coach. That's a team that, they've done it, they lived it, and they made the plays. So credit to them. I'm really proud of all these guys. I am. It's hard when you lose that way. It's hard. You feel like you get your heart ripped out. So, but I'm proud of that group, and I'll go anywhere with that group. And you wish you could keep it all together, but that's not the reality. So, we did some really good things, but today we didn't do enough, and it's tough.
James, this was a tough one. Coach Campbell said it. I think that epitomized what every Lions fan went through. Even though the Lions were such underdogs, we never felt like the Lions were outmatched in this one. As was evident by that lead early. But even when the game ended, it didn't feel like we got destroyed. It didn't feel like we lost. It felt like we just ran out of time.
Yeah, the 49ers got some breaks. The ball bouncing off of Vildor and Ayuk making a great catch, I think was one of the pivotal moments in that game. And it was just a matter of the ball bouncing the wrong way. The first half, though, was just phenomenal. They were steamrolling the 49ers. They proved all the doubters wrong, that they were the worst of the four teams left and they didn't belong to be there. And they showed that they did.
Yeah, let's get right into what we liked. Let's start at the beginning. I loved how they came out that first drive, that Jamison Williams touchdown run. As soon as they handed off, I was yelling, J-Mo, J-Mo, J-Mo. I probably yelled his name 20 times on that play because you just saw him going through the defense and cutting through it. And we got on the board right away, and that was impressive and a confidence booster. And then the defense held the 49ers to a field goal attempt that was missed. And so you couldn't ask for a better start to the football game.
Yeah, the whole first half was pretty much like that. The 49ers were able to get some points on the board. We just felt that the Lions were in control at halftime. They had been pushing the 49ers around. They were able to run the ball very effectively this season, which basically nobody's been able to do against that defense this year. They were able to kind of play bully ball and just run the ball up the middle, which coming into the game wasn't what people said that you could do to the 49ers defense. You couldn't throw over the middle and you can't run up the middle. You had to go on the edges. And the Lions said, well, we're still going to do it. We'll go to the edge maybe a little bit more than we normally do. You saw some of those wheel routes to Gibbs and those guys to the outside. But, they pretty much kind of stuck with their game plan and said, we're just going to do what we do. And they did it very effectively. What did they have, 150 yards rushing at halftime?
Is that what the Lions had at half? They ended with 182 for the whole game. I know that. And they were running really well early on, especially. You had David Montgomery on that second drive getting that touchdown to go up 14-0. And so every element of the Lions offense was working, and the defense, because even when Derek Barnes got hurt, Malcolm Rodriguez was in there, and I think it was Pascal who tipped the pass, but Rodriguez makes the interception, and then the Lions go down and score again, and they're up 21-7. And as you said it, I mean, they had that lead. They had the commanding lead. They even got that field goal right before halftime to go up 24-7. Goff was firing into tight windows. Everybody was making plays. It was an amazing feeling that whole first half. I liked all that.
Yeah, it was the first half was domination. Pretty much about as much as you see in domination in a playoff game this late in the season.
Now, I don't care if you watched the game at the stadium, at your house, at Ford Field, at an establishment in Michigan. There's a chance you've lost some of your voice since yesterday. I was very blessed and fortunate that I was able to make the trek out to SoFi Stadium. And I got to tell you, there were so many fans out there. That's something else I liked about this. Saturday night, man, you would have thought you were at an establishment in Michigan. There were so many Lions fans at that meetup. And I met people from Nashville, from Arizona. I met a person from Florida. So some Lions fans who lived in California, but they were Lions fans. And that includes a longtime Lions fans family member, Crackman. I met his cousin out there. And then I randomly met people from Traverse City out there even. It was really exciting. And the enthusiasm that everybody showed, my friend who flew in from Seattle to meet me, who's a New York Giants fan, was just surprised how many Lions fans turned out. And then when he got to the stadium as well, I mean, I was stunned to see. Now, I wasn't stunned because I was expecting it. But I think the 49ers fans, they probably heard the numbers, but they were probably surprised how much blue showed up out there.
Yeah, I was the things I was seeing on social media and stuff, the video that you sent of the Jared Goff chant before the game on the concourse. I mean, there was even on TV. There was a lot of blue in that stadium.
Yeah, I was going to ask you how it looked on TV because you're right. There were Jared Goff chants going through parts of the stadium. Heck, even the train ride down there, there were at least 15 to 20% Lions fans on the train, enough that, you know what, the 49ers fans had to respond and recognize us a little bit because we were invading their field a little bit. And, so that was pretty cool. The venue was pretty amazing. I will say the San Francisco crowd was out of it in the first half. And that was amazing that the Lions had played so well that they had pockets of cheering, but I could hear it, and I presume you could too, is the middle of the third quarter, that's when the crowd woke up, and that's when they came alive, and that's when the environment changed a little bit. Could you feel that on television?
Yeah, the whole thing just kind of changed. It seemed like everything just kind of turned around on a couple of plays there in the third quarter. The Ayuk catch, the Gibbs fumble, the Reynolds drop on fourth down. Those were all, I think, big turning points and really it made me really, really nervous. Whereas at halftime, everybody that I was watching the game with was feeling pretty good at halftime. In that third quarter, everybody got real nervous.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. We were feeling really good at halftime. And in the third quarter, that's go right into the didn't like and concerns. I'm just going to kind of group this. And it was, I didn't like the third quarter, because that's what usually has gone wrong for us. And the big thing was that includes the fumble right after San Francisco had scored. And so we're going to break down and go into some of those pivotal moments that you've brought up. But the thing I didn't like, or my concern, was just the way the third quarter went down and the momentum shifted. And I couldn't wait to get out of the third quarter, but that is what it is. And there were some pivotal moments in the third quarter that we're going to break down and dissect a little bit closer. Did you have anything in general that you had a concern about or you didn't like, James?
Kind of the same old in the third quarter for the Lions this season. And that's Ben Johnson suddenly just abandoning the run without it being unsuccessful. He's just, pulling the plug and just going all passing all the time, and which is just frustrating. And it's like, if the run game is working, and it was working so perfect in the first half, just keep doing it until they stop you, man. He just seemed to kind of play into their strengths a little bit in the third quarter, a little bit more, and got away from what was working, and it was pretty frustrating. I think it was him trying to be cute and auditioning for head coaching jobs, maybe a little bit. But we've seen this pattern all season.
Yeah, I don't know if it was him auditioning for other jobs, but I do think that we have seen this pattern. You're exactly spot on with that. And it didn't dawn on me until you said it earlier in the show how many yards the Lions had rushing early on. They had 166 yards with about 9 minutes to go in the third quarter, and they ended with like 182 rushing. And so to have rushed for that many yards, it's like, what happened? Well, there's a lot of things that played into that. So I think the first pivotal moment was that Malcolm Rodriguez interception, the Josh Pascal deflection, because that helped the Lions go and continue to build the momentum they had. And that was a great play by Rodriguez, who was stepping in for an injured Derek Barnes. I mean, all those things coming together. You had to feel really good about the way the Lions were looking at that point.
First half was great. Third quarter, everything turned.
Yeah, I mean, that starts with the fourth down play in the third quarter. There were 7 minutes left. The Lions had an 87% chance to win the game. And it was fourth down, and I think 2 or 3, but I think it was 2 at the 28-yard line. And Goff to Reynolds, it's a drop pass. It's not an easy catch to make, but it's a very catchable pass to catch. And it didn't happen. And that was a turning point. But that itself didn't do it. It was what came right next. And that was the 51-yard pass to Brandon Ayuk, who isn't going to catch that ball. But Vildor has a chance to intercept the ball. But then that doesn't happen. And as we all saw, the ball bounces off the face mask. Ayuk makes an incredible catch. And that's when it was 24-10. And then, at the 4-yard line, that set them up to make it 24-17. And that's when you really felt the crowd come alive there.
Yeah, and that's when you really felt the Lions collectively, Lions fans collectively starting to hold their breath for the first time in this game.
Yeah, up until that point, the Lions had led time of possession by about 4 minutes. And at the end of the game, the Lions trailed in time of possession by about 4 minutes. And so that showed you for the last part of the game, the 49ers had the ball 8 minutes more than the Lions did. So they got that touchdown. That made it a 1-score game. So right after that, of course, we have the fumble, the turnover on our side of the territory, and that set up a very short field, and the 49ers scored. They tied it up. And so, okay, you're feeling some stress and some pressure, but we were tied. We weren't trailing. And there were still 2 minutes left in the third quarter, and it's 3rd down and 10. And Goff hits Reynolds. And I was like out of my seat ready to cheer because we had the first down, but we had another critical drop. And that's when the Lions had to punt the ball with just a couple minutes left in the third quarter. And again, he makes that catch. We're in business. We're going down the field still. And I thought that was critical as well.
Yep. And then, that punt leads to the field goal, which gives them the lead. Now the Lions are chasing them. And then they have in the fourth quarter, they have another time where they go for it on 4th down and don't get it on a pass to Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yeah, it was 4th down and 3. There were only 8 minutes left in the game, and that was critical right there. Lions were at the 30-yard line, and they were down 3. They opted not to kick it. They went for it again, did not get it, gave San Francisco the ball back, and this time our defense could not get the stop. Brock Purdy, he was elusive on the ground. He made the plays to avoid some sacks and picked up some good rushing yard chunks when the 49ers needed it, and that put them up by 10. And so I would say those were the pivotal moments in the game. Was there anything else pivotal you saw before we talk about the storylines coming out of this?
No, I think that's about it. I mean, that's the 4 miscues in the third quarter, I think, were the 4 biggest plays of the game for the Lions as far as determining the outcome.
So as far as the major storylines go, the 2 4th down plays in the second half, the Lions opted to go for it. And there is some heavy criticism coming on Dan Campbell right now. Interestingly enough, the Lions opted to go for a field goal right at the end of the second quarter. It was 4th and 3 with seconds to go, and they decided to kick the field goal and go up by 17. And so what are your thoughts on all 3 of these field goal plays or non-field goal plays as well, so to speak?
Well, I mean, as far as Dan Campbell doing it, that's been what he's done all season. They've been very successful at it. So I don't begrudge the call. I mean, I think the Lions had 4th and 3 or less in opponent's territory 24 times this season, I think it was, or something like that. If I'm thinking of the stats right, and they've gotten it 19 times. You're talking almost 80%. So the percentages were there. The percentages were good. The offense had been working. I don't begrudge him doing that. If it's me, I'm kicking the field goals. but that's just that's just me.
Yeah.
I'm taking the field goals in those. And would that have changed the outcome of the game? I don't know, because it would have changed those last few drives and everything. But the Lions would have had potentially 6 more points, because both of those are like 45 or yard or less field goals. Badgley is pretty money on anything inside 45.
Yep, I think one was 45, one was 47. On that first one, I thought, hey, my friend next to me is like, "What do you do?" He was criticizing the play pretty heavily, and he goes, "Would you have kicked it?" And I said, "You know what? I could have gone either way in that situation. I did not have a strong leaning one way or the other." As far as the last field goal attempt or non-attempt, you know what? I probably would have kicked it too. But you know what? It's easy to sit here and talk about it. And I'll tell you this, all the people who said they would have kicked that field goal, that second one, they wouldn't have done half the things that Dan Campbell did this year. And he is the reason the Lions were in the NFC Championship game. Ask Sean McVay if he wishes he had gone for it on 4th and 15 instead of punting the ball to the Detroit Lions in the wild card game. And many teams cannot say that they were the NFC Championship game. There's only 2 this year, 4 that played in championship games. So I'm not faulting Dan Campbell for his approach. That 80% stat is huge. Mike Badgley's been good. He's been good. But he wasn't good enough to be our starting kicker at the beginning of this season. And, he did kick a big time field goal against the Rams, and that was the difference in the game. But if we have an 80% chance of success rate on doing something, and Dan Campbell's going to trust which part of his team, the offense, the strongest part of this team. And so you can't fault him for that. I saw a breakdown on the replay. There was a little bit of pressure that came from the left side that got in there, and that disrupted things a little bit. So it was close. It didn't work out. And I also want to say, because there is so much criticism going against Dan Campbell, I'll say this. It's easy to take the low-hanging fruit and criticize people when something doesn't work. And the truth is, it did work. That first one, it worked. The play worked. It just wasn't executed, right? They had what they wanted. It wasn't like the 49ers stopped them. It wasn't like it was well defended and that the guy batted it away. It was there. And so, anytime a play doesn't work, the critics come out. I'd also applaud him for going for that field goal at the end of the second quarter and taking the points on 4th and 3 from the 3-yard line when he could have said, all right, let's gamble and we get 7 or nothing here. But he took the points there.
Mm-hmm. No, I don't have any problem with Campbell's decisions to do it. I'm just saying if I was the coach, I probably would not have the balls to do that, and I would have taken the field goal. And Campbell's done this consistently all year, and it should have been no surprise to anyone. So I don't question that really. The one thing I do question in the fourth quarter was the 3rd and goal from the 1, which was running the ball, and only because I mean I was preaching before they needed to run the ball more, but this is a clock management thing. They didn't get it. They had to burn a timeout because of that. And, had you passed in that situation, you still can go for it on 4th. They eventually got the touchdown on 4th. But using a timeout there made it so that they had to do an onside kick. The option to play defense wasn't there anymore. If they'd kept all 3 of their timeouts, they had the option to kick off, play defense, force a punt, and get the ball back with a little bit of time left and maybe get a couple plays together in a Hail Mary or something.
I agree. I actually, when Laporta caught that ball and was forced out at like the 1 or 2 yard line, I was like, oh man, that's a bigger deal than people realize, because if he could have gotten in right there, there would have been, I don't know if it was 14, 15 more seconds on the clock, and we have all 3 of our timeouts, and it would have been enough to provide a little bit more of a chance.
Mm-hmm. That was actually Firkser.
Oh, that was
catch.
Firkser that called it. I have not gone back to watch the tape.
Yeah.
It was in the complete opposite side of the field as me. So, way to go for Firkser, Anthony Firkser.
Yeah, it was Firkser. He and his toe was just barely out of bounds, too, on the replay. It was out of bounds. I mean, he was out of bounds. But it was a nice catch and a nice effort by him. I think his first catch in the NFL.
Well, good for him, and it was nice to have him make that play. Yeah, sorry, didn't give him credit again. I have not gone back to watch the film on any of this yet. That was big, though. I was like, if you could have gotten in right there on that play, gives you a little bit more, because I was like, we've had our backs against the wall before, and again, it didn't feel like we were the inferior team on the field. I felt like we just ran out of time.
Yeah, I think the Lions. I think the Lions for the majority of the game outplayed the 49ers. I think the Lions should have won that game. And that's what I think a lot of people will come out of. And a lot of people would be more upset because of that, maybe, than had the Lions just gotten drubbed in this game. And a lot of people feel that the Lions should have won this game. And that, that is good. And you had Campbell after the game in his press conference talking about how, this could be our only chance to do this. We may not be able to get back here, which, is always a possibility. I don't want to get ahead of myself or anything like that, but the Lions caught a bunch of breaks in this season too that they may not catch in next year or the year after that. As far as from schedule to in NFL terms, having a fairly healthy team, a couple big injuries next year could change everything. Even though the Lions are going to be one of those teams that's going to be a favorite to get back here, right where they are.
No, I agree completely. I mean, look at Philadelphia from last year, right? There's a lot of teams that had high expectations and didn't get back or get as far as they thought they would. Like Coach Campbell said, you never know what next year holds. And that said, there's optimism in Detroit right now that we have not felt since the early 1990s. And I believe the optimism today outweighs even that optimism from back then.
Oh, completely. I think there's a lot more confidence from the fan base in the head coach who, there's no danger of Dan Campbell going anywhere else. You may lose some coordinators and some other assistant coaches or something, but Campbell's going to stay there. Brad Holmes is going to stay there. And those are the two guys that set the tone for this franchise the last 3 years. And they're the ones getting it done. Another
big storyline coming out of this is those guys chose Jared Goff in the trade. They had other options out there, but they did the trade for Jared Goff and those draft picks. And anybody who paid half a whit's attention knows that Jared Goff is good enough for Detroit. And it'll be interesting to see what type of contract extension he gets and what the future holds. But the last year and a half, Jared Goff has played some amazing football.
Yeah, he has. And I'm pretty sure that the Lions, that's one of the things at the top of their list is that they got to work on an extension for Jared Goff. It's just a matter of how many years and how much money. He's going to, at least for a little while, going to be one of the top paid quarterbacks in the NFL. The most recent starting quarterback in the NFL is always the highest paid quarterback until someone else does. But they got to do that. They got to decide whether they're going to, re-sign Jonah Jackson. They got some other guys that they want to do some extensions on. Do you bring back C.J. Gardner-Johnson? Do you bring back Emmanuel Mosley? And those are all guys. Mosley's maybe a guy who has to take a 1-year prove-it deal again because of his injuries this year. So he could be cheap. Jonah Jackson had a lot of injury problems this year, and you don't want to have those injury bug questions with you when you're going into free agency. So he could be somebody who could take another 1-year deal at a decent amount of money to stay in Detroit for 1 more year and then test free agency next year after hopefully playing all 17 games.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of free agency questions as we move into the offseason. I mean, we obviously have the draft as well. The who do we re-sign, who gets re-signed, and who are the new people that get brought in. Like Campbell said, next year's group's a different group. This year's group was this year's group, and they were special. And, they showed how special they were. They got to a level where nobody else in recent Lions history has, right? They finished the season 1 game short of the Super Bowl, losing in the NFC Championship game in a very competitive game, which, they probably did outplay their opponent, but the ball bounced and plays were made, and ultimately it ended 3 points in the wrong direction. But this was a great season nonetheless. The Detroit Lions won the division. First time since 1993 season. They won 2 playoff games. First time they won a playoff game since the 1991 season.
Yeah, I mean, it's a heck of a season, for a lot of Lions fans, who, especially the diehard ones who've been around and seen a lot of these bad teams, bad results, and and even emotional for a lot of people, a lot of fans that have invested a lot of time into this franchise, to see it get rewarded with an excellent season this year. And by all accounts, I think that these kind of things will continue in Detroit for the next few years, at least, because you've got a good core of young players. You've got a good core of guys that are under contract. You've got a head coach and a general manager who have done exceptional jobs over the last 3 years, who are still under contract for another 3 years, I think.
I believe that is the case. And you're right. We've got some great people making the decisions, and they're drafting and bringing in selective people in the right way, that you have to have the optimism. I mean, we were optimistic all season on this because we saw what the team was doing, and we seemed to understand it better than some of the national pundits who, destroyed the draft grade and stuff like that because it wasn't positional value and other things of that nature. But to turn around a franchise like this, to do it so quickly, it's tough because when you're that close, and like Coach Campbell said, you don't know that you'll be back. You never know. He believes we will, but you just don't. And it's like, you wish the opportunity could have seized itself. That being said, this is probably the best Detroit Lions season I have seen in my lifetime. It has been so exciting, so much fun. And I'm sad to see it end. It went longer than most people's season, but there's just 2 teams that are still playing, and I wish we were one of those 2.
Yeah, it would have been great to see the NFL season start the way it ended, or end the way it started, with Detroit and Kansas City.
Yeah, it would have been a perfect bookend of the season, with starting and ending with the same matchups, but slightly different variables.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think the Lions are a better team now than they were in week 1.
Agreed.
I think they have a better, that identity is there. That identity of, we're going to go for it on 4th down. We're going to, be an aggressive run team, and we're going to pound away at your defense. And I think that's more established now than it was in week 1.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. You saw the development of Jahmyr Gibbs. You saw the comfortableness of David Montgomery grow. Other teams in our division are getting better as well, but you saw our team get better, and we're going to add more to the mix, and this is only year 3. So it's exciting to see the direction this team is heading in. We'll have to see what happens with the coaching. Obviously Dan Campbell's going to be here, but both of our coordinators have been up for job interviews. We'll see what happens there, and then there's always shuffling beyond that as well. James, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
I know. I'm looking forward to next season.
More than you have many others, correct?
Correct. I mean, after last year, I was really optimistic, and after this season, even more so.
I agree with you completely. I think you and I were probably on that same optimism level at the end of last season. I mean, you were at that Packer game, and so you saw it firsthand. And you know what? This season was not a letdown by any means. It was pretty amazing. James, it's been so much fun doing these game recaps with you all season. I've greatly appreciated your insights, your perspective, and your depth of knowledge that you brought to the show. So thank you very much.
No problem. Thanks for trusting me to do this.
You're more than welcome. And folks, we're going to have a season in review episode coming out sometime next week where we look over a lot of different elements. So please keep your eye out for that. And thank you so much for tuning in, folks. You can find all the episodes at notthesameoldlions.com. If you're listening on YouTube, please hit that like button. And while you're at it, tell your friends about the show, and please subscribe regardless of your listening platform. Until next time, stay gritty, my friends.